So today I'm joined by Ryan Kirk, who's the head of cloud and DevOps for Formula One. Welcome to the interview today, Ryan. Formula One operates in an environment where milliseconds matter. How does that pressure shape the way your teams think about cloud architecture, delivery practices, and reliability?
It definitely factors into it. So covering architecture, obviously, yeah, milliseconds do count. We are trackside. We're also incredibly mobile. The deployments of architectures and stuff has to pretty much kind of follow where we go. That changes those parameters. We have a big presence back in the UK, and then we obviously have our cloud estate. So it really does affect kind of the way we design the systems are based on the requirements. What are the tolerances around. How many milliseconds, because we do talk in milliseconds at Formula One, and everything is milliseconds, and it's what are those tolerances, and that may shape where we deploy a system or build a system, how we architect it, and also the solutions that we do. So it's time plays a huge factor, whether that be latency or processing time or production, everything like that. And then when it comes to the delivery sides, we're kind of we're a bit of a travelling circus here at Formula One. We send 170 tons of technical equipment to every track, and then that all gets essentially to a data center, it all gets powered off, gets sent to the next. So we have to factor that into our delivery. Everything that we do on the race side and the stuff that you watch on TV is dictated by the race calendar, and those are our deadlines. And unfortunately for us, fortunately or unfortunately, those deadlines can't move. We can't delay a race because we haven't delayed it, right? So everything kind of looks ahead at that race. What are we delivering, or what are we testing? How are we doing that? How do we get everything in line ahead of that event? So when we power on, when we go out to that track, we're ready just to get into it, set everything up, test everything for when we go live on air. So that's a huge part of our delivery, as much as it is in our architecture practices.
You've led the shift towards cloud-native platforms and hybrid environments across Formula One. What principles guide your decisions when the organisation is balancing speed, safety, and innovation all at once?
So one of our principles, which we do tend to lean on, we're a very lean organisation, despite the operation that we put on and the technical delivery that we put forward as well. And so part of kind of that part of that adoption, I suppose, was how can we take the processes away from the engineers, that mundane stuff, that repetitive stuff, and we've lent so heavily on automation first where possible. And can it be automated, even if we're talking minutes per day or sometimes even minutes per week? Looking at those DevOps principles, automating those processes, and as we've moved forward, that's kind of had this compounding effect where we're running thousands of these processes that is just doing all this heavy lifting off the teams. And then it means that my team, Formula One teams, can focus their headspace on the innovation, the problem solving, the future thinking, all of that sort of stuff. So automation is definitely one of those. We are cloud native and we are hybrids, and that does introduce those some complexities and some things to consider. But the good thing is that with automation, it should be agnostic. So that's definitely one of those. And also that goes into the safety and the guardrails, and making sure that the guardrails are in place for development teams to develop freely and safely. So if you can get into that space where your compliance teams are happy with what these development teams are doing, and the development teams are then able to operate at a rate that they're happy with, it's kind of the sweet spot. So we try and aim for that too, and that's one of the other things that we sort of try to put in, or as we've adopted this, as we've gone through this journey, is basically innovation at speed and safety, and that's always a bit of a fine balance sometimes.
From your perspective, what does a responsible, trustworthy use of AI inside a software delivery lifecycle look like at Formula One?
We try to keep the engineers doing what they do best, and that is engineering. So we use AI to augment that. So not replace, but augment. And I think that was quite an important decision for us in our AI adoption. Was firstly, we took a nice sort of step back when that industry was in full boom mode. We took a step back and sort of looked at our operation and thought, where can we assist more than than replace, and not that we would ever look to replace, but we always want to augment our teams, our operations teams. Now, which we did. So I think having an example, we built a root cause analysis tool using generative AI, and this tool does all of the investigations of 5 different disciplines or multiple disciplines. So if you're a software engineer who's having or noticing some strange anomalies within their monitoring, instead of going and speaking to a network engineer, an operations engineer, systems engineer, and a cloud engineer, they can actually use a system that we've built, which is hooked into all these different platforms and logs and bits and pieces. And they can actually query that, and it will do all the correlation and look in the different log sources and come back with that pre-investigation. And it comes down to that whole augmentation process where that engineer is then empowered to do investigation work that may be outside their remit, or when they do eventually go to those human engineers, they've got all that information. Other use cases is obviously data. We have all this data. We have millions of data points that come off the cars, and it would be a crime not to see what we can generate and insights from that. So we do leverage AI for insights, stories that are going on that the viewer at home might not necessarily see. Very, very data driven. So using correlation of data to try and sort of give a forecast of what may be happening behind the scenes, and bringing that to the viewer at home, which is really cool. And then within the SDLC specifically, using coding assistance and using AI to speed up that SDLC from a development perspective, but also from a review perspective, having that kind of insight as the developer goes in to maybe review someone's code prior to production. There's a nice summary in there, and looking at ways we can do that. So again, going in there and almost having that information to hand on bits and pieces where AI has surfaced. Either maybe it's not following a design practice, maybe there's a potential something that could be made better or more efficient. So which is incredibly successful. We do like our coding assistant is built entirely in-house. It's a complete end-to-end ecosystem. So it keeps our compliance teams happy, and it's all private, and it's all different areas.
What have you learned about creating the culture, communication, and capability needed to deliver reliably at the pace Formula One demands?
So there definitely has been a few learning curves. So both the teams I look after the DevOps team and the cloud engineering team, are both ground up. So one of the things which has been what I've learned within Formula One is your business is your customer, certainly for us. So it's working with the teams that might not necessarily be teams that you've worked with in the past. They might be everything from legal to our live TV production teams, and actually showing and almost half my role, I feel, is a bit of a salesman. I do have to do a bit of sales, and sort of showing people what they don't realize they need. And if what they've got is what they've got, and they use that to create this great product. But how can we make it better? And that's where over the past few years, I've sort of come in here with these new things: cloud architecture and infrastructure and engineering, DevOps, and bring those in and going, look, this is how we can make your life better. Let's try and let's build that relationship. And it's quite a good journey, because what I found is once you get that use case, always starting with the pain point. That's what is your most give us your most painful thing, and we will look to try and solve that for you. And then once you do that, you're their best friend. You've solved their most painful point, and then comes a big list of can we do this and can we do that. So that's certainly been a lot of it. I'll say that sort of almost kind of salesy type pitch, but also having to deliver through with that and showcasing and constantly kind of come up with new ideas and bringing people in as well, and having those teams feed into what you're doing and getting their opinion is something that I think is quite powerful. And it helps with the adoption. It helps with that building of the team, because when people feel that they have an input into a system or something you're doing, or a piece of innovation, they're essentially a part of that journey, and you get that buy-in 10 times what you would if you just kind of sent something out and said, right, give this a go. So over the last few years, there has been a lot of that feedback loop and bringing them into processes and things that we're building, and stuff's not really, if they're not happy with something, sitting down with them and being empathetic to their situation as well. And I think that's kind of been quite a core part of building these teams ground up, because without that business trust and that business adoption, ultimately you're not really going to get very far before it sort of starts to go a bit stagnant.
So Formula One systems span trackside operations, cloud platforms, and on-premises compute. What's the most underestimated challenge in keeping these environments connected, secure, and resilient as workloads grow?
For us, the challenge is always the traveling kit, because it's a very uncommon model where you're sending so much technical infrastructure and it gets powered off and powered on, and you put it on the back of a lorry. That lorry drives across a continent, potentially if it's going through Europe. It goes on the back of a plane, and also you don't have access to it. The equipment and systems that you're dealing with, which are all of your acquisition, which is very latency sensitive. It's very difficult to simulate that. We do, but there's just nothing like the real thing. So this equipment comes back to the UK or comes back to our media and technology centre once per year for maintenance. So to get our hands on doing development work or deployments or fixes or whatever that is, we do have to wait for that equipment to be delivered to the track and powered on and connected across potentially the other side of the world back to the UK, for then engineers to start work on these systems. So the real one of the big technical challenges isn't necessarily is a bit of a technical challenge, but it's a bit more on the softer side. It's actually having the amount of development time we have for our trackside systems and infrastructure is severely limited. So it requires meticulous planning, but you can plan as much as you want, but you need it online. You need it powered on.
True, yeah.
But yeah, that equipment does go through it. I mean, we go to hot countries, we go to cold countries, we go to dry and humid countries, we go to wet countries, and it's typically servers and infrastructure and stuff doesn't tend to like to be turned off and powered on. So yeah, that's always a challenge for us, but it's one that we've always had, so we're quite used to it. It's always when someone external comes in and it sort of blows their mind a little bit. What do you mean? It's somewhere over in Japan. They're powering it up. It'll be powered on in a few days, and then we'll have the race, and then it all gets powered back down, and then it will be sent off somewhere else.
You're so right in the fact that there's all these variations and anomalies that could happen. And as you said earlier, you can plan for anything, but then there's just so much variety of the things that could go wrong or right at the time. So I guess there's that level of pragmatism as well. You have to be really well equipped for.
Exactly. My personal favourite from in my experience with F1 was in 20 it was either 2019 or 2018, and we were set up in Japan, and all the kit was online, and then Typhoon Hagibis was making a direct line for the circuit, and we had to make this decision because we had powered up and we had gone live on air, and what do we do? Do we call off the event? How do we do this? And our technical director at the time, he made the call of, right, we're gonna power everything down, and we're gonna move it into a garage, which we've never done before because it's a lot of equipment. We didn't know if it would fit. We were just calculating that it would, and everyone mucked in to do this, and this monumental effort. And then we had to hunker down in a hotel. The typhoon went over us, and through the track and stuff, and then we went back to the track afterwards and powered it all online. So really, there's so many anomalies, even the thing that you least expect, like a typhoon, might try and disrupt us. But we still put our race on, and we still delivered all the sessions. So it was the right call to make.
So as you share more about Formula One's engineering journey, what's the key idea or mindset shift you hope will stay with people?
it sounds a bit corny, but I think I think just try things. Just go out there. If you have these ideas, no matter like if you've got a proof of concept idea that's really out there, just give it a go. The worst thing that you can do is that it doesn't work, and then you're back to where you were before you started to do that. And and you might go and try 10 ideas, and they don't work, but then the 11th does, and then that becomes something incredible, something really bleeding edge, and something ultimately super cool. And I think, yeah, just don't be afraid to go and try something and fail. Is kind of the mindset shift that I would do, because that's what sort of Formula One is built upon: pushing the envelope, just trying things, and not being disgruntled if it doesn't work out.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ryan. It's really exciting to learn about Formula One more in depth.